Have you ever wondered why one person still lives inside your mind long after they have left your life? Maybe months have passed, maybe years, maybe you no longer talk to them, maybe you do not even know where they are or what they are doing. And yet somehow they are still there. A song reminds you of them. A quiet night brings them back. A random memory appears, and suddenly it feels like the past is happening all over again. You tell yourself you have moved on. You tell yourself you are done thinking about them. But then your mind returns to the same person, the same memories, and the same emotions, again and again. Most people believe this happens because they are still in love. But Buddhism teaches something far deeper. What if you are not trapped by the person? What if you are trapped by the attachment? What if the real reason you cannot let go has nothing to do with them and everything to do with the part of yourself you lost along the way? Tonight, we are going to uncover the hidden reason one person still has power over your mind. And by the end of this video, you may realize something surprising. The person was never the prison. The attachment was. And the key to your freedom has been in your hands the entire time. The person is gone, but the attachment is still alive. One of the most important truths in Buddhism is that attachment creates suffering. Not love, not care, not kindness. Attachment. Many people confuse these things without realizing it. They believe that because someone is always on their mind, it must mean that person is special. They think that because they cannot stop thinking about someone, it means they are meant to be together, or that the connection was deeper than anything else. But Buddhism asks us to look deeper, because sometimes what keeps a person in your mind is not love, it is attachment. Think about this carefully. If the person was truly the source of your suffering, then the pain should have disappeared when they left. But for many people, the opposite happens. The relationship ends, but the thoughts remain. The conversations stop, but the memories continue. The person disappears from your daily life, but somehow they still occupy space inside your mind. You may not see them anymore. You may not speak to them anymore. You may not even know what they are doing with their life. Yet they continue living in your thoughts. Why does this happen? Because what remains is often not the person. What remains is the attachment. Imagine holding a rope tightly in your hand. At first, it feels harmless. But the longer you hold it, the more your hand begins to hurt. Soon, the pain becomes unbearable. You wish the pain would stop. You complain about it. You wonder why it hurts so much. But the truth is simple. The pain is not coming from the rope. The pain is coming from your grip. In the same way, many people continue suffering because they are still holding on mentally and emotionally, not to the person, but to what the person represented. Maybe they represented love. Maybe they represented hope. Maybe they represented a future you imagined. Maybe they represented the feeling of being understood, wanted, or valued. And when they left, it felt as if those things left with them. But they did not. The mind simply became attached to the idea that they were the source of those feelings. This is why so many people spend years asking the same questions. Why did they leave? What were they really thinking? Did they ever truly care? Do they ever think about me? Would things be different if I had done something else? Could I have saved the relationship? These questions feel important, but most of the time, they never bring peace. Instead, they keep the wound open. The mind keeps searching for answers, believing that one more thought, one more memory, or one more explanation will finally make everything make sense. But it never does. Because the real problem is not what happened years ago. The real problem is the attachment that still exists today. The attachment keeps the memory alive. The attachment keeps the emotional wound from healing. The attachment keeps pulling your attention back to the same person over and over again. Buddhism teaches that everything in life changes. People change, relationships change, feelings change, dreams change. Even the person you were 5 years ago no longer exists. Life is moving every second. Nothing stands still. Yet the mind tries to freeze certain moments forever. It wants to hold on to a feeling, a memory, a person, a chapter of life that has already ended. And this is where suffering begins. Imagine standing beside a river. Watch the water carefully. It never stops moving. The water that passes by you now will never return. Life works exactly the same way. Everything flows. Everything changes. Everything moves forward. But attachment tries to stop the river. It tries to grab the water and keep it forever. It tries to hold on to moments that have already passed. It tries to make temporary things permanent. And because this is impossible, suffering appears. Many people spend years trapped in this struggle. They want the past back. They want old feelings back. They want old versions of people back. They want life to return to a moment that no longer exists. But life never moves backward. The river never flows in reverse. This is why some people remain emotionally stuck for years. Not because they are weak. Not because they are broken. Not because they cannot heal. But because part of them is still trying to hold on to something that belongs to yesterday. And as long as they keep holding on, the mind keeps returning to the same place. Again and again. The painful truth is that the person may already be gone. They may have moved on. They may have changed. They may have become a completely different person. But inside your mind, the attachment is still alive. And that attachment quietly continues, creating suffering. The moment you understand this, something powerful begins to happen. You stop asking why the person still has power over you. And you start asking a different question. Why am I still holding on? Because true freedom does not begin when the other person changes. It begins when you loosen your grip. It begins when you stop fighting reality. It begins when you finally accept that the chapter has ended. And in that moment, the attachment starts losing its power. Not all at once, but little by little, day by day, until one day you remember them without pain. You think about them without longing. You look back without suffering. And for the first time in a long time, your mind belongs to you again. You are not missing them. You are missing the part of yourself you felt with them. One of the most painful realizations a person can have is this. Sometimes you are not actually missing the person. You are missing who you were when they were in your life. At first, this idea sounds strange. Most people immediately think, no, I miss them. I miss their voice. I miss their presence. I miss our conversations. And yes, part of that may be true. But if you look deeper, you may discover something surprising. What you miss most is not always the person themselves. What you miss is the version of yourself that came alive around them. Maybe they entered your life during a time when everything felt exciting. Maybe you woke up every morning with something to look forward to. Maybe your heart felt lighter. Maybe you smiled more. Maybe life seemed full of possibility. Maybe you felt understood in a way you had never felt before. And because all of those feelings appeared while they were around, your mind quietly connected those feelings to that person. Now that they are gone, it feels as though those feelings disappeared too. So the mind reaches back toward them, not because it necessarily wants the person, but because it wants those feelings again. Think about a time when you looked at an old photograph. Sometimes the picture itself is not what makes you emotional. It is what the picture represents. A different season of your life, a different version of yourself. A version that felt happier, more confident, more hopeful, or more alive. The same thing happens with people. Many times, when someone remains trapped inside your mind, you are not actually holding on to them. You are holding on to the emotions you experienced when they were part of your story. Buddhism teaches that the mind creates attachments, not only to people, but also to feelings. The mind becomes attached to comfort. It becomes attached to excitement. It becomes attached to feeling wanted. It becomes attached to feeling important. And once those feelings disappear, the mind begins chasing them. It searches through old memories, hoping to experience them again. This is why people often replay the same moments over and over in their heads. They replay the first conversation, the first smile, the first time they felt seen, the first moment they felt special. The mind keeps returning to these memories because it is searching for a feeling it believes it has lost. But here is the truth that changes everything. Those feelings never belonged to the other person. They were created inside you. Read that again. Those feelings never belonged to them. They happened within your own heart. The other person may have triggered them, but they did not own them. The love was inside you. The hope was inside you. The happiness was inside you. The excitement was inside you. The ability to feel deeply was inside you. And if those qualities came from within you once, they can come from within you again. This is where many people become trapped. They spend years believing that one specific person took something away from them. They believe happiness left when that person left. They believe peace left when that person left. They believe joy left when that person left. But Buddhism reminds us that no person has the power to take away what already exists within us. What often disappears is not our happiness itself. It is our connection to it. We become so focused on the person that we forget ourselves. We stop exploring our own lives. We stop growing. We stop creating new experiences. We stop discovering new sources of meaning. Instead, we sit in the past and convince ourselves that everything good exists behind us. But life does not work that way. The mind loves to romanticize the past. It takes a few beautiful memories and turns them into an entire fantasy. It forgets the confusion. It forgets the disappointments. It forgets the moments of uncertainty. It forgets the reasons things ended. And little by little, the person becomes larger than reality. They become a symbol of happiness, a symbol of love, a symbol of a life you think you lost. But symbols are dangerous, because symbols prevent us from seeing the truth. The truth is that no person can contain your entire happiness. No person can contain your entire future. No person can contain your entire worth. Your life is much bigger than one chapter. Your story is much bigger than one person. Your future is much bigger than one memory. The Buddha often taught that suffering begins when we cling to things as though they are permanent. We hold on to people. We hold on to experiences. We hold on to identities. And when life changes, we suffer because we expected those things to stay forever. But everything changes. That is the nature of life. People arrive, people leave, seasons come, seasons go, relationships begin, relationships end. But the deeper self within you remains. The awareness that watches all of it remains. The peaceful part of you remains. The wise part of you remains. The loving part of you remains. And that is where true freedom begins. The moment you stop searching for yourself inside another person. The moment you stop believing they were the source of everything beautiful you felt. The moment you realize that what you are really looking for has been inside you all along. because perhaps the person you miss is not the real loss. Perhaps the real loss was your connection with yourself, and perhaps your healing begins the moment you stop chasing them and start returning to the person you were always meant to become. The person who does not need someone else to feel whole. The person who does not need the past to feel alive. The person who finally understands that what they were searching for in another human being was quietly waiting inside them the entire time. The real prison is the story your mind never finished. One of the deepest reasons someone continues living inside your mind is not because of who they were. It is because of the story that never truly ended. Most people believe they are suffering because they lost someone, but often they are suffering because their mind never accepted the ending. The relationship ended, the friendship ended, the connection disappeared. But inside the mind, the story is still playing. The final page was never turned. The final chapter was never accepted. And because of that, the mind keeps returning to it again and again. Have you ever noticed how difficult it is to stop thinking about something that feels unfinished? Maybe someone suddenly walked away without explaining why. Maybe they changed without warning. Maybe they stopped caring when you still cared deeply. Maybe they left questions behind that were never answered. And because there was no clear ending, the mind keeps searching for one. It keeps replaying old conversations. It keeps examining old memories. It keeps looking for clues. It keeps asking the same questions. Why did this happen? What changed? What did I do wrong? What were they really feeling? Could things have been different? The mind believes that if it can just find the right answer, it will finally be free. But years pass. The answers never come, and the suffering remains. Buddhism teaches that the mind has a powerful need for certainty. It wants every story to make sense. It wants every ending to feel complete. It wants every wound to have an explanation. But life does not always work that way. Some people leave without giving you closure. Some questions never receive answers. Some chapters end without warning. And one of the hardest lessons in life is learning that not every story gets the ending we wanted. The mind struggles with this truth because the mind prefers a painful answer over no answer at all. That is why people spend years trapped inside old stories. Even painful stories, even stories that hurt them, even stories they desperately want to escape. At least the story feels familiar. At least the story gives the mind something to hold on to. So, instead of letting go, the mind keeps returning to the same memories. Like a person walking in circles inside a prison without realizing the door is already open. Think about how many times you may have replayed certain moments. The last conversation, the last message, the last goodbye, the moment everything changed. Perhaps you have replayed these moments hundreds of times, maybe thousands, yet every replay creates the same pain. And still the mind says, maybe one more time, because it is searching for an ending that memory can never provide. This is one of the great illusions of the mind. It convinces us that thinking more will heal us, but often, thinking more only keeps us trapped. The mind becomes like a person scratching a wound over and over again, then wondering why it never heals. Each time you revisit the story, you temporarily feel close to the person again. You temporarily feel connected to the past again. But when the memory fades, the pain returns. And so the cycle continues again, and again. Buddhism teaches that suffering does not come from what happened. It comes from our resistance to what happened. We suffer because reality ended one way, but our mind keeps demanding a different ending. Part of us keeps saying, this should not have happened. They should have stayed. They should have loved me. They should have understood me. They should have chosen me. But reality has already made its decision. The chapter has already ended. The river has already moved forward. Only the mind remains behind, trying to negotiate with the past, trying to rewrite something that can no longer be changed. Imagine watching a movie. The movie ends. The credits appear. Everyone leaves the theater. But you stay in your seat for years, staring at the screen, hoping the ending will change. That is what many people do emotionally. Life has already moved on. The story has already ended. Yet part of the mind remains sitting in the dark, waiting for a different ending. Waiting for a message. Waiting for an apology. Waiting for closure. Waiting for something that may never come. And while it waits, it sacrifices the present moment. It sacrifices new experiences, new relationships, new opportunities, new happiness. Because all its attention remains focused on a chapter that has already closed. This is why Buddhism places so much importance on acceptance. Acceptance does not mean you approve of what happened. Acceptance does not mean you stop feeling sadness. Acceptance does not mean pretending the loss did not matter. Acceptance simply means seeing reality as it is, not as you wish it had been, not as you hoped it would be, but as it truly is. The moment you accept that the story is over, something powerful begins to happen. The mind slowly stops fighting reality. The endless questions begin to lose their grip. The need for perfect answers begins to fade. And for the first time, peace becomes possible. Because peace does not come from finally understanding every detail of the story. Peace comes from no longer needing to. The truth is that some stories will never feel complete. Some questions will remain unanswered forever. Some people will leave without explaining why, and that is okay. Because your freedom does not depend on their explanation. Your freedom does not depend on their return. Your freedom does not depend on the ending you wanted. Your freedom begins the moment you stop asking the past to become different. The moment you stop demanding another chapter. The moment you stop waiting for a conclusion that may never arrive. Because the real prison was never the person. The real prison was the unfinished story your mind refused to let go of. And the key has been in your hands all along. The key is acceptance. The key is allowing the story to end. The key is finally turning the page. Not because the chapter meant nothing, but because your life is too precious to spend it living inside a story that has already ended. You are grieving an old version of yourself that no longer exists. One of the deepest truths most people never realize is that sometimes you are not grieving the other person at all. You are grieving the version of yourself that existed when they were part of your life. This is why certain people remain in your mind for years. It is not always because they were perfect. It is not always because they were your soulmate. It is not always because they were the greatest love of your life. Sometimes they remain in your mind because they are connected to a version of you that no longer exists. And deep down, you miss that version of yourself. Think about it carefully. When you remember them, what exactly are you remembering? Are you remembering the person? Or are you remembering how you felt when you were with them? Maybe you felt hopeful. Maybe you felt excited about the future. Maybe you felt confident. Maybe you felt loved. Maybe you felt seen. Maybe you felt like life was opening new doors for you. When you look back at that period of your life, you are not only seeing the other person, you are also seeing yourself. A younger version of yourself. A version with different dreams, different expectations, different beliefs about the future, different hopes about how life would unfold. And when that chapter ended, It felt as though that version of you disappeared too. This is why the pain can feel so confusing. You tell yourself you miss them, but what you are really missing is the person you used to be. You miss how alive you felt. You miss how hopeful you felt. You miss how open your heart felt. You miss the future you imagined. You miss the dreams you built. You miss the person you thought you were becoming. Buddhism teaches that everything in life is constantly changing. Nothing stays the same. Not people, not relationships, not emotions, not circumstances, and not even your identity. The person you were 10 years ago is gone. The person you were 5 years ago is gone. Even the person you were last year has already changed. Life is constantly creating and dissolving different versions of ourselves. Yet the mind often becomes attached to a particular version. A version it loved, a version it felt safe with, a version it wants back. And this creates suffering. Because the mind keeps looking backward instead of forward. It keeps trying to return to a chapter that no longer exists. Imagine finding an old photograph of yourself. You look at the picture and suddenly a flood of emotions appears. You remember where you were. You remember who you were with. You remember what you believed your future would look like. For a moment you feel a deep sadness. Not because the photograph is painful, but because you realize that person in the photograph no longer exists. That version of you is gone. Life moved on. Time moved on. You changed. And this is exactly what happens when certain people remain trapped inside your mind. They become connected to an old identity, an old chapter, an old self. And every time you think about them, you are also reconnecting with the version of yourself that existed during that time. This is why letting go can feel frightening. Because it does not feel like you are losing only the other person. It feels like you are losing part of yourself, part of your history, part of your story, part of your identity. But Buddhism offers a powerful insight. You were never meant to stay the same. Growth requires change. Growth requires endings. Growth requires allowing old versions of yourself to disappear. Think about a tree. Every year it sheds old leaves. The leaves fall to the ground. The tree does not chase them. The tree does not beg them to return. The tree does not spend years grieving what has fallen away. It simply continues growing, and because it lets go, new life appears. New branches appear. New leaves appear. New growth appears. Human beings are no different. Yet many people spend years trying to hold on to old versions of themselves. They keep replaying memories because they want to feel like that old person again. They want the same emotions, the same excitement, the same certainty, the same dreams. But life is asking them to become someone new, and that is where the struggle begins. The mind says, I want my old self back. Life says, you are becoming someone else. The mind says, I want things the way they were. Life says, that chapter is over. The mind says, I miss who I used to be. Life says, there is a new version of you waiting to emerge. Many people never discover that new version because they spend all their energy looking backward. They become emotionally trapped in an identity that no longer fits, like an adult trying to wear clothes they wore as a child. No matter how much they try, they cannot return to who they once were, and they do not need to, because the purpose of life is not to become who you were. The purpose of life is to become who you are capable of becoming. This is why healing is not about recovering your old self. Healing is about meeting your new self. The stronger version, the wiser version, the more peaceful version. The version that learned from the pain, instead of becoming trapped inside it. The version that no longer needs the past to feel complete. The version that understands that every ending carries the seed of a new beginning. Buddhism reminds us that suffering comes when we resist change, but freedom comes when we flow with it. The person you were with them is gone. The chapter is over. The identity attached to that season of life has passed. And that is not a tragedy. That is life. Because every chapter that ends creates space for another chapter to begin. Every old identity that falls away creates room for a new identity to emerge. And perhaps the reason you cannot find peace is because you are still searching for the person you used to be. When peace arrives, it often arrives through a different realization. The realization that you do not need to become that old version again. You only need to become fully present with the person you are becoming now. Because the greatest loss is not that an old version of you disappeared. The greatest loss would be refusing to grow beyond it. And perhaps the next chapter of your life is waiting for the moment you finally stop grieving who you used to be and start embracing who you are becoming. That is where healing begins. That is where freedom begins. And that is where the power of the past finally starts to fade. Loneliness makes the past look more beautiful than it really was. One of the most powerful tricks the mind plays on us happens when we feel lonely. In moments of loneliness, the mind does something strange. It begins to look backward. It begins searching through old memories, old relationships, old conversations, old chapters of life. And suddenly, people who have not been part of your life for years start appearing in your thoughts again. You may be sitting alone one evening. The house is quiet. The day is ending. There are no distractions, no noise, no messages, no one demanding your attention. And without warning, your mind brings someone back, a face, a voice, a memory, a moment. And for a few seconds, it feels almost comforting. It feels familiar. It feels safe. But what most people do not realize is that they are not actually missing the person. They are trying to escape the feeling of loneliness. This is a very important difference. Because when loneliness enters your life, the mind becomes desperate for comfort. And the easiest place to find comfort is often the past. The past is familiar. The past feels known. The past feels predictable. Even painful memories can feel safer than an uncertain future. This is why loneliness often makes old attachments feel stronger. Not because the connection suddenly became more important, but because the emptiness inside you became louder. Buddhism teaches that the mind is constantly seeking something to hold on to. When it feels empty, it searches for distractions. When it feels uncomfortable, it searches for escape. When it feels lonely, it searches for connection. And often, the quickest connection it can find is a memory. The problem is that memories are not reality. Memories are selective. The mind does not replay the past like a camera. It edits the story. It removes certain parts. It highlights others. It creates a version of the past that is often very different from what actually happened. Have you ever noticed how people rarely miss an entire relationship? Instead, they miss certain moments, certain feelings, certain memories. The mind takes a few beautiful moments and turns them into an entire story. It remembers the laughter. It remembers the good conversations. It remembers the feeling of being close to someone. But it often forgets the confusion. It forgets the disappointment. It forgets the sleepless nights. It forgets the moments when you felt ignored. It forgets the reasons the relationship ended in the first place. This is why loneliness can be dangerous. It makes the past look more beautiful than it really was. It places a golden light over old memories. It smooths away the rough edges. It turns ordinary moments into something magical. And little by little, You begin longing for a version of the past that never truly existed. Think about how often people say things like, "I will never find someone like them. I was happier back then. Everything felt better when they were around." But if they could travel back in time and relive that period exactly as it happened, they would probably rediscover all the struggles they have forgotten, the arguments, the doubts, the disappointments, the insecurities, the emotional pain. The mind rarely remembers these things when loneliness takes over. Because loneliness is not interested in truth. Loneliness is interested in comfort, and the past becomes its favorite hiding place. Buddhism encourages us to become aware of this pattern, not to judge ourselves, not to criticize ourselves, but simply to notice it. Notice what happens when you feel lonely. Notice where your mind immediately goes. Notice which memories suddenly become important. Notice which people suddenly seem impossible to forget. Because often the person is not the real issue. The loneliness is. The person simply becomes the symbol the mind uses to avoid facing the emptiness it feels in the present moment. This is why so many people stay emotionally attached for years. Every time loneliness appears, they return to the same memory, the same story, the same person, and the attachment grows stronger. Not because the person has power over them, but because they keep using the memory as an escape from what they are feeling now. Imagine being thirsty and trying to drink from a photograph of water. No matter how beautiful the photograph is, it cannot satisfy your thirst. The same is true for old memories. No matter how comforting they seem, they cannot give you real connection in the present moment. They cannot create a future. They cannot walk beside you. They cannot help you grow. They can only remind you of what once was. And when you depend on memories to escape loneliness, you slowly become trapped between the past and the present, unable to fully enjoy either one. Buddhism teaches that freedom begins when we stop running from loneliness. Most people fear loneliness because they misunderstand it. They see loneliness as proof that something is missing, proof that they are incomplete, proof that they need someone else in order to feel whole. But loneliness is often something much deeper. It is an invitation to reconnect with yourself, an invitation to discover who you are when no one else is around, an invitation to become comfortable in your own presence. This is one of the most difficult lessons on the spiritual path, because it is much easier to chase memories than it is to sit quietly with yourself. It is much easier to replay old conversations than it is to face the emptiness inside. It is much easier to romanticize the past than it is to build a meaningful present. Yet true healing begins when you stop escaping, when you stop running, when you stop using old memories as emotional shelter. And instead, you begin learning how to be present with yourself. Little by little, something beautiful starts to happen. The loneliness becomes less frightening. The silence becomes less uncomfortable. Your own company becomes enough. And as your relationship with yourself grows stronger, the past slowly loses its grip. The memories remain, but they no longer control you. The person remains part of your story, but they no longer live at the center of your mind. Because you finally understand something that the lonely mind often forgets. The peace you were searching for was never hidden inside another person. It was waiting inside the relationship you have with yourself. And the moment you discover that, the past stops looking like home, because you have finally learned how to be at home within yourself. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It means choosing peace. One of the biggest fears people carry is the fear of letting go, not because they want to suffer, not because they enjoy holding on, but because deep down they believe that letting go means losing something important forever. This fear keeps countless people trapped inside old memories. They tell themselves they want peace. They tell themselves they want freedom. They tell themselves they want to move on. Yet every time the opportunity to let go appears, something inside them pulls back. Because part of them is afraid that if they stop thinking about the person, they will disappear completely. Afraid that if they stop replaying the memories, those moments will be lost forever. Afraid that if they finally let go, it will mean that the relationship meant nothing. This is one of the greatest misunderstandings of the human mind. The mind believes that holding on is a form of love. The mind believes that suffering proves something was meaningful. The mind believes that if you stop hurting, you are somehow betraying the memory. But Buddhism teaches something very different. Buddhism teaches that letting go is not an act of forgetting. It is an act of wisdom. It is the decision to stop turning memories into chains. Think about this carefully. A person can leave your life and still remain part of your story. A chapter can end and still remain important. A memory can stay in your heart without controlling your future. You do not have to erase the past to find peace. You do not have to pretend someone never mattered. You do not have to deny what you felt. True letting go is not about removing someone from your memory. It is about removing their power over your happiness. There is a huge difference. Many people believe healing means forgetting, that one day they will wake up and no longer remember the person, no longer think about them, no longer feel anything when their name appears. But real healing rarely works that way. The memory often remains. What changes is your relationship with the memory. At first, the memory controls you. It can ruin your day. It can steal your peace. It can trigger sadness, regret, longing, or pain. But over time, if you allow yourself to heal, the memory becomes lighter. You remember, but you no longer suffer. You look back, but you no longer cling. You acknowledge the past, but you no longer live inside it. This is true freedom. Imagine carrying a heavy stone in your hands. At first, you barely notice its weight. But as the days pass, the stone becomes exhausting. Your arms hurt, shoulders ache. You become tired. Yet, instead of putting the stone down, you convince yourself that carrying it is necessary. You tell yourself it represents something important. You tell yourself it proves how much you cared. You tell yourself that putting it down would somehow dishonor what happened. So you continue carrying it, year after year. The stone grows heavier, your suffering grows deeper, and all the while you forget one simple truth. You were never meant to carry it forever. Many people do this emotionally. They carry old pain, old heartbreak, old regrets, old memories, not because they want to, but because they believe letting go means losing the meaning attached to those experiences. Yet the meaning does not disappear when you put down the burden. The lesson remains. The growth remains. The wisdom remains. Only the suffering disappears. This is what Buddhism tries to teach us. The purpose of life is not to carry every wound forever. The purpose of life is to learn from the wound and continue walking. There is a beautiful difference between remembering and clinging. Remembering is natural. Clinging creates suffering. Remembering allows life to flow. Clinging keeps life frozen. Remembering honors the experience. Clinging turns the experience into a prison. Many people think they are honoring the past when they hold on, but often they are only prolonging their own suffering. Because the past does not need to be carried. The past only needs to be understood. And once it has taught you what it came to teach, it can be released. The Buddha often spoke about attachment as the root of suffering, not because attachment is evil, but because attachment refuses to accept change. It keeps saying, "This should have lasted forever. This should not have ended. This should still be mine." But life continues moving. Reality continues moving. And the more we fight against that movement, the more pain we create. Think about the river we spoke about earlier. The water never stops flowing. Imagine trying to hold a handful of river water forever. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. The harder you fight, the more frustrated you become. But the moment you open your hand, something changes. You stop struggling. You stop fighting reality. You allow the river to be what it is. This is what letting go truly means. It means opening your hand. It means allowing life to move. It means allowing people to come and go. It means accepting that some chapters were never meant to last forever. And perhaps the hardest part is realizing that peace does not come from getting everything you wanted. Peace comes from accepting what is. Many people spend years waiting for closure, waiting for an apology, waiting for a second chance, waiting for someone to return, waiting for life to become the way they imagined it would be. But while they wait, life keeps passing by. New opportunities arrive, new relationships arrive, new experiences arrive. Yet they cannot fully receive them because their hands are still full of the past. This is why letting go is not a loss. It is a gift. It creates space, space for healing, space for growth, space for new beginnings, space for a deeper relationship with yourself, and perhaps most importantly, space for peace. The peace that does not depend on another person. The peace that does not depend on the past. The peace that does not depend on circumstances being perfect. The peace that comes from finally accepting life as it is. One day, you may still remember them. You may still think about certain moments. You may still smile when a memory appears. But the pain will no longer own you. The longing will no longer control you. The story will no longer define you. Because you will understand something that most people spend their entire lives learning. Letting go was never about forgetting them. It was about choosing yourself. Choosing your peace. Choosing your freedom. Choosing to stop carrying yesterday into every moment of today. And the moment you make that choice, something beautiful begins to happen. The heart becomes lighter. The mind becomes quieter. The past becomes softer. And for the first time in a very long time, you stop asking how to get them out of your head, because you finally understand that peace was never waiting for them to disappear. Peace was waiting for you to let go. The moment you stop feeding the memory, their power over you disappears. After everything we have explored in this journey, we arrive at perhaps the most important lesson of all. The lesson that changes everything. The lesson that finally reveals why one person still has power over your mind. Because the truth is this: they do not actually have power over you anymore. At least, not in the way you think. They may have left years ago. They may not know what you are feeling. They may not know you still think about them. They may not know they still appear in your thoughts. And yet, every day, they continue affecting your emotions. How is that possible? Buddhism offers a simple but powerful answer. The person is no longer creating your suffering. The memory is. And more importantly, the attention you keep giving that memory is what keeps it alive. Think about a fire. A fire cannot continue burning forever on its own. It needs fuel every day, again and again. The moment the fuel stops, the fire slowly begins to die. The same thing happens inside the mind. Every time you replay an old conversation, you add fuel. Every time you revisit an old memory, you add fuel. Every time you imagine what could have been, you add fuel. Every time you wonder what they are doing now, you add fuel. Every time you create imaginary conversations in your head, you add fuel. Little by little, the fire continues burning. Not because it is powerful, but because it keeps being fed. This is one of the hardest truths to accept. Many people believe they are victims of their memories. They believe memories simply happen to them. But Buddhism teaches that attention is one of the most powerful forces in human life. Whatever receives your attention grows stronger. Whatever loses your attention grows weaker. This is true for habits. It is true for fears. It is true for anger. And it is true for attachment. The mind works like a garden. Imagine two plants growing side by side. One plant represents peace. The other plant represents attachment. Every day, you choose which plant receives water. Every day, you choose which plant receives sunlight. Every day, you choose which plant receives your energy. The plant that receives attention grows. The plant that is ignored slowly fades away. Many people spend years watering attachment while wondering why peace never grows. They spend hours thinking about the person, hours replaying memories, hours imagining different outcomes, hours wishing the past had been different. And then they ask why they cannot move on. The answer is simple: because they are still feeding what they want to release. Now, this does not mean forcing yourself to stop thinking about someone. That is not how healing works. In fact, the more you try to force a thought away, the stronger it often becomes. Have you ever told yourself, "Do not think about them"? And suddenly you think about them even more. This is because fighting the thought is still giving it attention. Buddhism teaches a different approach. Instead of fighting the memory, observe it, notice it, allow it to appear, but do not follow it. Imagine sitting beside a road. Cars pass by all day. Some cars are beautiful, some are ugly, some are loud, some are quiet. But you do not chase every car that passes. You simply watch. Thoughts are the same. Memories are the same. They appear, they pass, they disappear. The suffering begins when you jump into the car and allow it to carry you back into the past. One memory appears, then another, then another. Before you know it, 30 minutes have passed, an hour has passed. Your mood has changed, your peace has disappeared, and all because you followed a thought. The Buddha often taught that freedom begins with awareness. Awareness allows you to see what the mind is doing. Awareness allows you to notice the moment attachment starts pulling you backward. Awareness allows you to gently return to the present, again and again. This is how healing happens, not through force, not through denial, not through pretending you no longer care. Healing happens through repeated awareness. Every time you choose the present over the past, the attachment becomes weaker. Every time you stop feeding the memory, the chain becomes lighter. Every time you return your attention to your own life, your own growth, and your own peace, the mind slowly releases its grip. And one day something surprising happens. The memory appears, but it no longer controls you. You remember them. But you do not suffer, you think about them. But you do not feel trapped, you look back. But you no longer feel pulled backward. This is the moment many people spend years searching for, not because the memory disappeared, but because its power disappeared. And that power disappeared for one simple reason. You stopped feeding it. You stopped giving it your energy. You stopped building your life around it. You stopped treating it as the center of your emotional world. And little by little, the attachment faded. Many people wait for time to heal them. But time alone does not heal. There are people who remain trapped by the same memory for 10 years, 20 years, sometimes even longer. What heals is not time. What heals is where you place your attention. Because your attention is your life. Where your attention goes, your energy follows. Where your energy goes, your future follows. This is why reclaiming your attention is one of the most powerful things you can do. For years, perhaps your attention has been living in the past, inside old conversations, old memories, old hopes, old wounds. But your life is not there. Your life is here, in this moment, in this breath, in this day. The people who care about you now are here. The opportunities waiting for you are here. The peace you are searching for is here. Yet attachment keeps whispering the same lie. It says, happiness is behind you. It says the best chapter is over. It says the person you lost was the source of everything good. But Buddhism teaches the opposite. The source of peace was never another person. The source of peace has always been your own mind. And the moment you stop feeding the memory, something extraordinary begins to happen. The energy that was trapped in the past starts returning to you. The attention that was given away starts returning to you. The peace that seemed lost starts returning to you. The freedom that seemed impossible starts returning to you. And for the first time in a very long time, you begin to feel something different. Not attachment, not longing, not regret, not sadness, but freedom. The freedom to enjoy this moment without carrying yesterday. The freedom to remember without suffering. The freedom to love without clinging. The freedom to move forward without fear. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. The person never truly had power over your mind. The attachment had power. The memory had power. The attention you gave it had power. And the moment you reclaim that attention, you reclaim your life. Because the final key to getting them out of your head is not forcing them out. It is finally giving your attention back to the one person who has been waiting for it all along. Yourself. So if there is one thing to remember from this video, let it be this. The person may have left your life, but they do not have to keep living inside your mind. You do not have to spend the rest of your life replaying the same memories. You do not have to keep carrying the same attachment. You do not have to keep giving your peace away to a chapter that has already ended. The truth is, the person was never the real prison. The attachment was. The unfinished story was. The old version of yourself was. The loneliness was. The memories you kept feeding were. And the beautiful thing is that everything you feed can also be released. Little by little, day by day, thought by thought. You do not need to force yourself to forget. You do not need to hate them. You do not need to erase the past. You only need to stop living inside it. Because your life is still happening. There are still experiences waiting for you. There are still lessons waiting for you. There are still people you have not met yet. There is still peace you have not discovered yet. And none of that can fully enter your life while your heart remains trapped in yesterday. So tonight, instead of asking, why can't I stop thinking about them? Ask yourself a different question. What would my life feel like if I finally stopped giving this memory so much power? Sit quietly with that question, because the answer may change everything. The moment you stop chasing the past, you create space for the present. And the moment you create space for the present, peace begins to enter. Not from another person, not from another relationship, but from within yourself. That is the path Buddhism points us toward. Not the path of forgetting, but the path of freedom. And perhaps freedom begins the moment you finally choose yourself. If this message spoke to something you have been carrying in silence, let me know in the comments. What is one attachment, memory, or old story you are learning to let go of? Sometimes putting it into words is the first step toward freedom. And if you found value in this teaching, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the Inner Buddha Code for more timeless Buddhist wisdom on attachment, inner peace, mindfulness, emotional freedom, and awakening. Until next time, take care of your mind, protect your peace, and remember, you are not your thoughts. You are not your memories. You are the awareness behind them. And that awareness is already free.